Hello, Clobots. I watched the GQX episode 2, and it came out earlier this week. I also watched the GQX The Beginning movie as well. I think this episode sucked. I think it was really bad. The fight scenes were cool, animation was cool, presentation was cool, aesthetics were cool. So if I think all of this is cool, why do I think it's really, really bad? I think it's really bad because despite all of that, like once you get over the nostalgia pandering that it is clearly hearkening to, which I thought was cool. I thought it was cool seeing like, oh yeah, that was like in the original Mobile Suit Gundam. Excellent. Yeah, I remember that. And it's like, it's cool, you know, it's cool. There's cool things, but it's just cool. That's it. It's cool. That's it. It's cool. Once you get over that and you actually think, okay, how does this episode fit in the context of the anime? What does this provide other than basically seeming like it's fluff, okay? You can tell me, oh, but Sylvie, it explains the divergence in the timeline. And I'm gonna clap back and say, okay, sure. But if you're new to Gundam, say GQX is your first Gundam show ever. You watch episode 1, you watch episode 2. First, you're like, whoa, the art style is completely different. What a weird episode. And then you're like, you watch the episode and you're like, okay, the fight scenes are cool. But how is this relevant to what I just watched? Okay, I understand the captain is who Shalia Bull is referencing to. Okay, I get that. And some explosion thing happens, and they briefly mention Zeon, and they mention Zeon again. Okay. And then we're gonna continue back with episode 1. From episode 1. It's really bad placement. It makes no sense. From an objective point of view, it's a really bad episode in how it contributes to the anime. Other than it looks cool. Which is the best part about it. It looks cool. Now, let me posit you this. What if this was instead a prologue, instead of taking up one of the valuable 12 episodes of GQX? What if I told you that I will dip into spoiler territory in a moment because that they cut out basically half of what happened in the beginning, half of it got turned into an epilogue right at the end? What if I told you that? Do you think it's still like a really good episode if they cut out this part? And it's not just they cut this part out. They actually cut out parts that would have been directly relevant to episode 1 and just GQX in general. They cut out the most relevant parts of the entire thing for no reason. And we might see those as flashback sequences, maybe, I don't know. And then we'll get like the animation whiplash, and then it's gonna take even more, when they could have just made a prologue right in the beginning. Let me tell you, now we're gonna dip into spoiler territory, because I'm gonna tell you about the parts that you missed, because Bandai said we're not gonna have it as a prologue so everybody can see it. We're gonna have it as a movie, only available in select locations. Alright, you ready? It's spoiler time. So, as you saw in episode 2, they skipped basically to an epilogue that talked about how the Zeknova happened, a mysterious explosion happened at Solomon, an explosion that wasn't an explosion, and we're gonna continue with episode 1. That's basically how it is. So the parts that I think were very important that they skipped over was, if you remember back in episode 1, they talk about Mav this, Mav that. He's my Mav. Mav. It's a very important word. Do you know why it's important? Because in the parts that they skipped, you go directly to the epilogue, something that I think is very good to talk about in the very beginning of the anime because it's a very critical mechanic that they talk about. Shalia Bull and Char were basically the first Mavs. It is the system that he developed, and it's basically, yeah, we're partners. You can kind of extrapolate that from the first episode. But instead of Lala existing in Char's life, she's not there because of how the events happened. Shalia Bull is instead the pilot of the Elmith, and is Char's map. They're basically partners. They're really, really good partners together. And that is also helps to reinforce how Shalia Bull always keeps thinking about the captain in the GQX anime. It's going to be very important. Well, not really very important, but it helps add extra background to that. It contributes to the anime, contributes to it. So, Solomon exploding, you see it happen in the parts that were missed. Char goes into a covert operation in Solomon and he's planning on sabotaging it himself. But everything goes wrong when a suspicious Gundam colored GM, I think it was a GM light cannon, a GM light cannon shows up and he gets the new type senses. He's like, what a familiar feeling. Oh my god, Artesia, is that you? Yeah, that's... And then like new type shenanigans happen and then he sees like the colorful kira kira sparkle new type stuff that Mashu sees and talks about the kira kira. And it sets that up. And it lets you understand that new types are very powerful. If you're new, if you haven't even seen Gundam ever in your life, you would have understood, okay, whatever this is, it's very strong. It's very fueled by emotions. You would have extrapolated so much information from that they skipped over and they said, nah, we're not going to include this part. We're just going to put this episode and just include the first part, which is basically just nostalgia fluff. I like nostalgia fluff, don't get me wrong, but this really should have been a prologue because every single thing that happened in the GQX beginning movie, they could have put as a prologue. They could have put as a prologue, it would have made sense. You don't have the art direction whiplash from like the new GQX to the old style, basically. It would have been way more cohesive, it would have made much more sense instead of you show this really weird section where there isn't much to take away in the context of the anime. And then you continue from episode 1. It makes no sense. It makes zero sense. Okay, let me put it this way. I dislike this episode, its placement, and its reasoning so much that if you don't know, I hate Darling in the Franxx. I think that is a really awful mecha show, and I think it's still really bad anime. And the only reason people like it, and why it's even popular, is literally because everybody has an obsession with 02. That out of the way, there is an episode in Darling in the Franxx where it vomits exposition on you. It's one episode that's pure exposition, pure lore, pure history, and it just vomits it all over your face that they could have spread out in like 10 episodes and been more cohesive. That episode was better than episode 2 of GQX in how it contributes to the anime. Because episode 2 barely contributed anything if you just look at it from like an objective perspective and what's going on in the anime, and it would have been way better suited as a prologue. You don't need to actually know that the Gundam was stolen. You don't actually need to know that he painted it red and all this stuff happened. That does nothing to advance GQX. The only thing that it serves to do is let you know this is the captain that Shalia Bull is talking about. And that's it. That's it. Nothing in that episode. Oh, I guess the Zeknova epilogue that they talk about very briefly. That's probably going to happen at some point. But they skipped over like all the other actual relevant parts. So it's like there's nothing really important in this. Like if anything, you see the epilogue where they talk about the Zeknova and you're like, okay, some big explosion happened. I've never watched Gundam before. I don't know what this is. And now you're left with this open-ended question of, I don't know why they should talk about this Zeknova. By pure logical reason, it's probably going to happen in this anime. But I don't know why they would like talk about it or spoil it. So now like I kind of like expect that some big explosion is going to happen in the anime. In the way that the epilogue talked about it. It's just bad. It's really, really bad. It is a really, really, really bad episode because they skipped all of the important parts that are relevant to GQX and they didn't just make it a prologue. It's dumb. It's dumb. I don't know why they didn't just do that. It just makes no sense to me. every fiber of my being of when I used to write stories and when I used to read a lot of stories, I'm just like, if you threw this random ass flashback scene to me and I'm in the middle of a story or I just started a story, I'd be like, why are you info dumping all this stuff on me that I don't understand how it's relevant? And it's not going to be relevant for maybe until the new stuff happens. It's really not. Because, quite frankly, from the episodes that we still have to see that were in the beginning, all the parts they skipped will actually be relevant to the next episode or two that aren't there anymore. All the parts they skipped would have made so much more sense, or would have made the next few episodes. You would have been like, oh my god, this is like the prologue that didn't happen. It's really dumb. Anyway, I'm still gonna watch the series. I just want to watch the new stuff. But I was really disappointed they decided to do this, because if they decide to be like, oh, we're gonna show like what we skipped as flashbacks later on, you're gonna have the art direction whiplash, and you're gonna sit there knowing that instead of making a prologue, they could have just added an extra 2 episodes to this already short 12-episode Gundam anime. Keep that in mind. Anyway, that's it.